Redditors, what's the most cruel thing you've ever done? Strangled a boy in middle school because some of my friends said that he was talking crap behind my back. It was fricked up because he started to vomit when I let him go and he was crying real bad. I felt really bad that night and couldn't sleep. I apologized the next day and told him to strangle me to make amends, but he declined. I felt like I owed him something, so I let him borrow my PS1 for the weekend. We become good friends after that. Now it's the only way he can get an erection. You're a monster. On a Friday night in high school, we had 50 cents left. Our parents were about to pick us up at the end of a night downtown, arcade and stuff. What could we do? We went through the phone book and grabbed an absolutely random person. We ordered them 2 pizzas, extra large, only anchovies, no cheese, to be delivered at 10 p.m. So that was 25 cents. With the last quarter we ordered the same person 2 dozen roses with a note saying sorry for the pizza, to be delivered at 10:15 p.m. This happened when I was 15. My buddy and I had just smoked a joint and were walking to 711 to grab some munchies. En route to 711, we saw an old man fall, and he seemed to be struggling to get back up. Our high, panicked minds told us we should bolt off in the other direction rather than go help the poor guy. I hope he ended up being okay. Cruelest thing you didn't do. I broke a girl's heart in the worst way. I met this girl online. I can't remember which app, but a nice girl she was. We went out for drinks on our first date to a local Mexican restaurant nearby where I lived. We had 1 drink each, ate really quick and went back to my place for some much needed time for the both of us. The deed was done, so she left happy and I was happy. We continued this for a while, except I didn't claim her as a girlfriend, as much as she claimed me as a boyfriend. I'm not the relationship type of person, but I played along just to sleep around with her. After about a month of a nearly daily physical encounter with this young lady, she calls me one mid-afternoon. She tells me that she's pregnant, and internally I'm mainly at myself for bringing this upon me. I really didn't like this girl that much, yet here I am, about to have a child with her. So I figure to myself, I'll just stay with her until she has a baby, then we'll split after and figure this child support crap. Well, a few weeks after the news and pretending I'm excited to be a dad, she calls me up crying. She's sobbing and telling me she had her period and went to the doctor and they said she had lost the baby. She was devastated and was blaming herself. While I tried to consult her, I dumped her the week after. I told her that I was never really feeling what she felt at all. She let me have it, and I deserved it. I still feel horrible about it 3 years later. I broke her heart like a jackass that I told myself I'd never become. I haven't talked to her since, but I wish her the best. You did the right thing, in an alternative world where no one has feelings. A sea of a girl I went to high school with had a massive obsession crush on Patrick Swayze. Well, the day he died my buddies and I were sitting in the hall of school and just eating lunch. The girl sat with her friends down the hall and was being her loud, ignorant self. So, the following conversation happened. Me: hey, see girl, this is her name for the story. Cunt Girl, what the frick do you want? Me: Patrick Swayze died today. Insert my friends and I dying of laughter. Cunt Girl, no he didn't. Insert her friends confirming said fact, and her breaking down into tears and letting out the loudest wails of sadness you can imagine. She was pretty upset for the next few days, and she had recently dated one of my buddies at the time and cheated on him. So being the person that I was, I decided to escalate the Swayzeness and continue on with the chaos. My buddy and I, let's call him Jacob, we drew a picture of a rather rotted and emaciated looking Patrick Swayze hanging from a tree and wrote a super awful joke, which is as follows: why do they call it Dirty Dancing? Because he's 6 feet under. And then we slipped the picture into her locker with our names scribbled into a giant heart carved into said tree. She saw it, got super angry and I guess had some kind of fit in front of her locker. She wasn't at school for like a week after that. Yeah, I feel bad about that, somewhat. When I was in high school I had friends, but none of them truly cared about me. I was never invited to things and they never stood up for me when I was bullied. I swore to myself that I would never cave and do thing to try and impress them. I had a party thing for my 13th birthday and invited a bunch of these girls who never invited me to anything for a sleepover. They all came, and that night I caved and joined in with their bullying. We prank called this one girl all night and they all found it hilarious. The entire time I felt absolutely sick to my stomach, but I kept doing it over and over in the hopes I'd finally be accepted. This poor girl had just found out her parents were getting divorced after her father had had a 4-year-long affair. I will never forgive myself for doing that, and I'll never forgive myself for not apologizing to her while I still had the chance. I've never been able to find her on Facebook. Both of my parents were killed when I was little, so I grew up with my grandparents. I was always very self-conscious about not having a mom and dad like other kids, especially when I went to places where there were a lot of families. Once, my grandfather and I stopped by a restaurant called the Burger Shack to pick up some hamburgers and take home for lunch with grandma. The place had windows all along the front, and I could see a lot of kids with their parents inside. I didn't want to go in with my grandpa because I felt like everyone would know I didn't have parents like them, so I asked to stay in the truck while he went in and got the burgers. When we got home, I overheard him telling my grandmother that he thought that I was embarrassed to be with him at the Burger Shack. I was probably 8-10 years old, and I didn't have the guts to explain that I wasn't embarrassed by him. I was ashamed that I didn't have parents like the normal kids. My grandma and grandpa have been dead for over a decade now, and to this day I regret that I never explained to him why I did that. He was a fantastic grandfather and was my best buddy growing up, which makes it even worse that I made him think that he embarrassed me. In first grade, my cousin and I picked on a kid from school and hung him by his underwear on a fence post. Sorry, whatever your name was. I bet he remembers what your name is though, even now. I was 8. Got into a screaming contest with a neighborhood girl. Picked up a rock and threatened to throw it. She goaded me saying, "Do it. I dare you." So I did. Hit her right in the head. Drew blood, lots of it. As kids, we would catch tadpoles in the river, throw them in a bucket, then carry them to our friend's garage where we'd fill up cans of gasoline. We'd then put the tadpoles in the gas and see how long they could survive swimming around like mad. They didn't like that too much. In retrospect, we were some sick M at 7 years old. My entire class in high school voted for the worst possible girl to represent us as homecoming queen. She had transferred from some other place and was a real hillbilly girl who dipped snuff. It was a really shameful thing to do. The faculty quietly disqualified her on a technicality because she hadn't been there for the full school term. I was told by a friend that a girl who bullied me for years was writing an anonymous adult blog about her and her partners and posting pictures to it. Once I confirmed that it was in fact her, I made it my mission in life to share the blog and the evidence proving it was her to all her friends and family. All anonymously, of course. I laughed my butt off reading her aunt, gran, boyfriend, who knew nothing about it, and everyone else ripping into her on social media over being so stupid. I should have felt bad for her when people at school started quoting her first riding backdoor experience to her in the hallways. But I'm not going to lie, I loved watching her hide away in shame. Found out that my best friend since kindergarten, we're 24 now, had cheated on his girlfriend while he was on a school trip down to Argentinian. Their relationship was so stable that she was going to propose to him in a couple of months. She already bought the ring after 6 years of dating. Anyways, I got a call from his girlfriend at the time and she was weeping uncontrollably. Found out that he had cheated on her with a random chick while not wearing protection, and that she had caught something. I got so pissed off that I met him at his church and went to lunch with him and his entire super religious family, all the while playing cool, not letting on that I knew about what had happened. So there we are all at Red Robin gathered around the table about to say grace when his very pious dad asks me what I've been up to lately. That's when I decided to say to his entire family who was listening in that I spent the entire morning trying to console my friend's girlfriend after she had been told that he had cheated on her. I proceeded to then tell them that their son, brother, grandson, nephew had not only contracted herpes but had passed it on to his girlfriend. They all kind of looked at me in disbelief and then looked at my friend who was then trying to cover his beet red face and saw that everything I said was true. After a couple moments of silence, I stood up, paid my part of the bill and left. Was I a dong? In a word, yes. Did he deserve it? Maybe not, but when your friend who you most respect in the world goes against everything you have ever believed in, simply cause he was bored, then any action that isn't nuclear is just going to justify that behavior. TLDR. Found out my best friend cheated on his GF and gave her herpes. Revealed the news in front of most of his family during lunch. Totally just ifed. Herpes doesn't freaking go away. A guy drove a wedge between my girlfriend and I so his friend could slip in, and it worked. We were pretty much done anyway so it didn't take much work. But his betrayal hit me pretty hard. I was a recluse for a couple weeks, then decided nah, frick that. Instead of fading away and letting myself be depressed while he got away with it, I pretended I was over it and kept hanging out with the group. Of course the girls were happy that I seemed cool with it, but the guys knew it was trouble. In a couple weeks I drove a wedge between him and his girlfriend. He became a hyper-defensive overbearing dong trying to keep me away from her, and it got on his girlfriend's nerves. Eventually it was just too much and she broke it off with him. I immediately slipped in, partied with her, and had gratuitous amounts of fricking. The guy was destroyed. He stuck with the group and I really rubbed it in his face. He called me one day asking me how I could be so cruel. I told him that now he knows how I felt, and then excused myself to go frick his girlfriend. Brutal. D. I came up with the bright idea for every kid in the neighborhood to pee in a bowl to dump on the kid who was picked on by everyone. I feel bad whenever I think about it. Jesus Christ, mate. When I met up with my weed dealer and before getting out of his car I let out a really wet, crappy fart and said oops then shut the door. My mom was notorious for not hiding who her favorite kid was. Spoiler alert. It wasn't me. That being said, I learned early on anything I proudly brought home from school would end up in the trash. So my freshman year of high school, I took an art class. I wasn't really into it until we started working with charcoal. Our assignment was to do a still life portrait with charcoal. I spent hours on this piece. From the arraignment of my subjects to every little shadow. My class was right before lunch, so one day I actually skipped lunch to work on it. That's how into it I was. So anyway, it gets graded and I get to take it home. I didn't bother telling my parents, because they wouldn't care. I was going to stay at a friend's house for about a week over a break. Not uncommon. I ended up living with her at some point in my teenage years and for some reason, I left my drawing in the garage. A week passes and I come home. I go in the garage and it's gone. I search everywhere and can't find it. So I ask my mom, and get the answer I was scared to hear. It was taking up room. So I threw it out. I was livid. I went back into the garage and found all the art pieces my sister did in high school that of course, my parents kept, but no, of course mine weren't good enough to keep. I took all her pieces and dragged them to the middle of the garage. I dumped a small amount of gas on them and lit a match. My dad walked in as it lit. He panicked and started screaming at me to put it out. I didn't move. My sister cried when my mom called and told her. She made me get on the phone and apologize, which I begrudgingly did. But I wasn't sorry, and honestly, now I'm only sorry I ruined the only mementos from her teenage year she had. I'm not sorry I burnt her crap. I still don't care how childish that is. I never drew anything again. I was coldly and cruelly honest to a woman I got pregnant because I didn't want her to keep the baby. When I was around 30 I was casually sleeping with a woman a few years my senior. I knew she likely wanted something more but it was just a casual thing for me. One day she told me that she was pregnant with my baby. She said she didn't know what she wanted to do with it. Her look was both scared and hopeful. As soon as she told me I felt an iciness take over me and my whole demeanor changed. While I acknowledged that it was her ultimate choice what to do with her body, I told her that I did not want to have a child with her. I said to her in no uncertain terms that we were not going to get married and that we were not going to be a couple. I continued that any romantic relationship that we had is now over. I let her know that if she decided to keep the baby, and if it was proven to be mine, a really cruel statement to make, I would be financially responsible and have a relationship with the child but I would only deal with her at arm's length concerning the child. I ended it by saying something to the effect of if you keep the baby you will be a single mother and you will probably then be single forever. It was so cold. I got what I wanted but I'll never forgive myself for how I utterly ripped this woman apart at an incredibly vulnerable time. I refused to hug my mom or tell her I loved her for like 15 years. This was because she lied to the cops and got me sent to juvenile detention in order to keep my abusive alcoholic father out of jail. That seems more reasonable than terrible. She's the terrible one. I was a mean little kid. In 2nd grade we had to bring one of our most valuable belongings to school to tell about it and stuff. My friend brought her incredibly cool Pokemon binder collection with her, and I wanted it so bad that I stole it in the middle of the day. Nobody figured out who did it. I hid it pretty well, I guess. Anyways, she started crying really bad and told me that her grandfather bought most of them to her and he had died, or something like that. I felt so bad that I threw them all out in a lake. A freaking lake. I could have anonymously returned it, but no, I threw them out. Of course I regret it. It was the worst thing a little girl could do at the age of 8-9. But don't be mad at me now. Be mad at little tiny me. This is surprisingly one of the most hellish things among a sea of comments of emotional, physical and social wreckage. I laughed at a girl when she told me she had been violated. I didn't do it because I think debauchery is funny, but because I misunderstood what she said. I thought she meant it as a joke, which I realize still isn't okay. Even though it was a misunderstanding, I still realize how cruel it was and now know better. Happy Cake Day. My freshman year of high school I took the school bus every morning. One morning while I was half asleep, some kid in a seat behind me stole the Monster energy drink from my bag. I confronted them. Teo guys shared it about it, but they just denied it. When I got home that day I bought 2 more Monsters, the large cans with the plastic seals and screw-on caps. I drank about 1/4 of Monster number 1 and refilled it with my urine, and then I stored them both in the fridge so they could be nice and cold for the next day. As I arrived at the bus stop the next day I let my friend know of my plan. He held Monster number 2 while I stored Monster number 1 in my bag. We got on the bus. I plugged my headphones in and put my hood up so as to look as distracted as possible, and sure enough I heard the sound of my bag unzipping. As everyone gathered in the common area of my school before classes started, I watched the thief drink Monster number 1. Halfway through the drink my friend started telling all of the thief's friends about the plan. He didn't believe it until he witnessed me drinking Monster number 2 a few minutes later. They never stole from me again. In middle school my cousin and I made a fake Club Penguin account pretending to be this really awesome boy who had all the same interests as my aunt, who is younger than me. It was just supposed to be a prank, but it went on for too long and got way too deep. I always feel bad thinking about how bad her feelings were hurt. I once found a dead cat that I assume someone had put on the train tracks to be split open when I was in middle school. My friends and I thought it would be cool to throw rocks at it and hit it with a stick. I've never been a large fan of cats, but my wife surprised me with one 2 years ago, and that little crap is my baby now. It kills me every time I think of what I did to that poor thing. I'm positive the cat didn't care. A weird kid that lived down the street showed me and my friend this kickbutt fort he built in the woods behind his house. Like it was on a dirt mound with a gigantic hole dug in it so you could go underground. On top he built a crow's nest kind of thing out of wood that his dad helped him build. One day on the bus he did something to pee me off. He was pretty annoying. I don't quite remember what it was. So that night, my friend, my brother and I snuck over to his fort and jumped up and down on top of the dirt mound until the underground portion of the fort caved in. Then we doused the rest of the fort in lighter fluid and burned it down with some matches I stole from my dad. I'm usually a pretty nice guy, but my biggest flaw is definitely that I take revenge too far. I feel like such a piece of crap every time I think about this. He was in the fort, wasn't he? You all remember Pogs, right? Well, they were basically currency in 5th grade. This kid would do anything for Pogs. I mean anything. I was the ringleader of our playground terrorist group. We promised him some Pogs if he would do our bidding. Man, we made him eat dog crap, punch himself in the face. He even put his mouth on this other kid's dong. You know, all that weird borderline gay crap that bullies make kids do. In the end we didn't give him a single Pog. What the mother frick? I broke up with my high school girlfriend of a year and a half with the excuse that I didn't want to leave her behind when I left for the army. I had signed up and was scheduled to leave for basic training a month after graduation. which was a few months after our breakup. A month later I started dating another girl. Me and my ex had been asked to have our picture taken for the cutest couples or whatever it was in the yearbook. Once we broke up, I tried to have it removed but they had already been printed. So now my senior yearbook, which is the only one I ever bought, will be a constant reminder of my dowry. Been married to the girl I left her for going on about 4 years now. That cutest couples idea was awful. 90% of those relationships don't last and likely end badly. In my elementary days, I tortured one yellow gourami fish because it ate my 10 plus smaller fishes in the aquarium. I had to teach it a lesson by putting it in a pot with water, and you know the rest. I boiled it to death. Holy freaking crap, dude. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.